do you want to? Well, you're right. Obama's done triple the number of drone attacks in the first year that Bush has done in the last 4 years of his presidency. And the point about the Swat Valley, people have, you've heard numbers of 500,000 refugees and so on, but it has been more, according to Pakistanis I know, more like 2 to 3 million. The other thing that's not been reported, you know, when it's talked about, you know, you read in the press, Pakistan stepping up to its responsibility to side with the U.S. in the war on terror. Well, there was one report in the New York Times that documented what journalists found when they went through one of these areas in which the Pakistani military had, quote, done its job, unquote. Every body they found on the street had marks of torture. You know, there were bodies just literally littering this area. Thousands of people had just been killed. Again, you know, the actions, and who does that build support for? The Islamic fundamentalists, the Taliban. So there's been this horrific escalation. And, you know, the other thing that's so chilling about it is that a lot of this, I think some of it isn't, I'm not sure if it's Concord or there's a thing in Florida where these guys are dressing up in fatigues, going to these remote, to these bases in the United States where they are directing all this from 8,000 miles away. I mean, it's just nightmarish to think about it. But just here in a nutshell, in terms of the grand strategy, and Bill referred to this, and this is what I delve into in my book, is that the Bush regime, but even the Democrats, Brzezinski and so on, feel control of Eurasia is key to global dominance. 80% of the world's oil, I think it's 70 or 80% of the world's population, similar figures for economic production. Afghanistan and Pakistan are dead center in the middle of this region. So there are military dimensions, there's oil dimension, there's also a real issue of a real concern by the U.S., by the Obama administration, the U.S. strategists, that this could unravel, that there's a potential. I wouldn't go as far as Bill and say the U.S. is lost, but a potential for unraveling in Afghanistan and Pakistan with huge strategic consequences. That, in my view, is what, quote unquote, forced Obama to escalate. He's the commander of the U.S. imperialist empire. He is working to save that.
Very good breakdown.
Well, it's good we brought up the drones. I mean, it's such a hideous new arsenal. I mean, that, you know, that you can just sort of like, you know, be good at video games, and then, you know, they put you behind a screen, and then you know, blow up a village, and then you go home to the wife and kids or whatever. So, I mean, it's important to understand that it's like, it's the fastest growing part of the military, and there's actually 2 distinct programs. One is under the Air Force, which is run out of, what is it, one of the base in Las Vegas, Creech? Creech. Okay, so that's where the Air Force drones come out of. Now, the worst ones, and the more secret part of the war, is what's going on in Pakistan, and that's directed out of Langley. And the people that are actually running that program are military contractors. So once again, like all the military contractors, they're sort of like ultra-legal. They're outside of sort of the realm of doing anything wrong, or you know, being able to be under any legal jurisdiction, which some in the military is, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, although it's broken constantly. At least there would be, you know, there would be some liability there. But the thing that's happening in Pakistan is really a part of a very secret type war, because it is, you know, so many people, or so many civilians are getting killed by this. You know, this is the new generation smart bomb, but it's not that smart. I mean, you drop, okay, maybe you get a few Al-Qaeda in one village, but you've blown up the whole village. There are more civilians that have been killed in the Iraq and Afghanistan war in relationship to the number of combatants in any war at all, ever. And the thing that's going on here is that getting back to McChrystal, and who was like going to bomb all along the eastern part of Afghanistan, and now it's spread into Pakistan. What's coming out of their mouth now is much different. Suddenly, McChrystal is talking about his grave concern about civilian casualties. And that is because they're doing this end game, once again, about how they're going to pull opposition forces in Afghanistan into some sort of agreement. The reason, one of the main reasons that the war in Iraq kind of wound down was the fact that the U.S. actually started paying off militias, and pulling U.S. soldiers back from actually being engaged in fighting. So that was why suddenly they say, well, there's a pacification going on. Our position, of course, is that we say all this has to get sorted out by the Iraqi people, by the Afghani people, and the Pakistani people by themselves, without the occupation forces. I mean, that's it. We have to be struggling against the occupation forces. What's going on in Pakistan is really, it's very frightening, because the government there has come increasingly under the control of the military, and which is totally, in direct cahoots with the U.S. government. So.
Russ, going to say something about that?
We had a liberation theologist priest here last Sunday who has been expelled from Honduras. He's been working with the poor for the last over 20 years. And it's obvious from anyone who's paid attention to any of this that, the coup is still in power. So would you comment on Honduras and South America? Maybe it's not Eurasia, but it's obviously important, and what's happening there.
Well, it's been so exciting what's been going on in Latin America with what is really a wave of progressive, sovereign struggles, if you will. These countries who are standing up now for themselves. And of course, there's a wide range of how progressive they are, especially led by Venezuela. But the U.S. is extremely concerned about it. And, if they weren't so tied up in these other wars, there's a good, we could make a strong argument that they would be going after Venezuela in a much more, forceful way. Obama's first test in Latin America would be in Honduras, where basically they let it happen. They let it happen. And to even think that the U.S. didn't have anything to do with that is, it's ridiculous. They were completely, their hands were completely involved in this. And, the one thing that we can only hope for is that the resistance with Honduras is a resurgence there. And that, this whole wave that's going in Latin America. And you can't forget, the ability for Cuba to be able to survive over 50 years now of a blockade has been able to stand up for itself, and also to be a huge inspiration for all of Latin America. And that is why Cuba offers no threat to the U.S., but it's a tremendous inspiration for the rest of the world. And that cannot be understated.
Just a quick interjection. This is an extremely moving afternoon, on Sunday afternoon, and this gentleman, this priest, made it clear. He said, I want everyone to hear me clearly. This invasion was about war, was about oil. So, in Honduras, the coup in Honduras, he said, make no mistake, he repeated it a few times. That's what it reduces to.
Okay, I just wanted to ask you a question regarding the future of the anti-war movement, which has been, somewhat damaged by Obama's election. And there's been sort of the possibility swinging around the blogosphere and other places about the possibility of a left-right coalition against war. And I know that probably has a lot to do with, Ron Paul.